So in fact, degrowth was, the word itself, décroissance in French, was said the first time in the 70s, in 1972, in an article written by André Gorz, who was one of the fathers of degrowth and ecological politics and this type of ideas. And later in 1979, when Jacques Greenwald and Ivo Rens translated into French the text of Nicolas Georgescu-Roegen about this anthropilo and the economic process, they had to find a word to define that, to give a title to a book in French. And they say that décroissance is a very interesting word because we really have to somehow decrease our footprint, and in particular we really have to decolonize our imaginary and start to think in another way. And in the 80s, 90s, these words and these ideas totally disappeared with the big political victory of neoliberalism and money, and everywhere, you know, there is no alternative, as Margaret Thatcher said. And in 1990s, there was the end of the communist time, and everybody started to believe in growth for growth, neoliberalism, and this type of capitalism, and everybody saw that it will provide good happiness for everybody. And in fact, it didn't work. So in the beginning of the years 2000, a group of people in France who were adbusters, activists, they started to think about how to create a new movement. And they used again this word décroissance, degrowth, as a provocative slogan to really open a debate about this growth mania. And I think it's a very effective word because when you listen to a mainstream politician like Hollande, like Obama, like Orban here in Hungary, they cannot make a sentence without speaking about growth. They think that everything will be solved with growth. And in fact, growth could be good, growth could be nonsense, and we should really question and to think in a more complex way. And in the beginning of the year 2000, they created this movement. They created a journal called La Décroissance, Degrowth, and also some people started to organize some local groups, started to organize some march, and it was immediately quite successful. And in other countries everywhere in the world, some people question as well this idea of growth. There was, for example, voluntary simplicity movements a bit everywhere, people who start to live in another way to protect themselves. And there were also movements like transition, for example, or people working on environmental issues, on alternative economic system, etc., etc. And in 2008, there was the first International Degrowth conference in Paris, 2010 the second one in Barcelona, and the third one last year in Venezia. And we saw some people coming from everywhere in the world, like in Venezia, there were something like 500-600 people coming from every continent, from 60 countries, and everybody arrived with the same question, that we understand that growth for growth is nonsense, that it's totally absurd, it doesn't make you happier, that it's not possible anymore, and this question, how can we make a transition to something else? And now we have this type of very strange movement around these ideas, around these questions, around this experimentation, and we don't really see the limits of the movement. And I think it's something very good, because there are also people dealing with such ideas without using the word degrowth, and doing a lot of very interesting things. And we try to create like a network of different type of people, different type of collectives, different type of cultures, approaches, where we start to initiate, think, a transition to something else. And we can define three political levers of the degrowth movement. There is an individual one about voluntary simplicity. So it means that in my everyday life, I question, what do I consume? I work for what? What do I produce? How do I produce it and everything? And step by step, I start to be more free. I start to reappropriate the tools. I start to reappropriate my free time. I start to consume less, to have less debt, less need to work, so more free time and stuff like that. Inside this individual level, we also have this idea of decolonization of our imaginary. So it means that I start to think about what was put in my brain since I was a child, what is put in my brain by advertisement, by the media, by TV, and how can I get rid of all this frustration, all these needs put in my brain to consume always more, etc. In the second level is a collective level, where collectively people try to experiment, initiate alternative economic system, alternative productive system. It's all the initiatives like transition initiative, like permaculture movement, like community gardens, like self-managed workshops, like you repair your bike, do it yourself, movements, and also alternative economic systems like local currencies, shared systems, etc. And with all these initiatives, which are rising everywhere, and with a very interesting dynamics everywhere in the world, we start to experiment, to experience what could be tomorrow degrowth societies, what could be tomorrow alternative sustainable ways of life. The third level is what we call visibility. It's to be visible in the society, and it's a bit more like traditional activism, where we promote degrowth. We participate to election in promoting degrowth. We organize demonstration. We organize civil disobedience action. We organize lectures, discussion, debates, screenings, whatever. And it's very important to go to talk with other people, to go to question the sense of growth, to go to question why we have such a crisis, what is this crisis, how to get rid of this crisis, and to involve more and more people in these dynamics. And the last level is about the project. It's all the intellectual or academic thinking about how to make a transition to new types of model and what could be tomorrow sustainable and desirable new models of society, what we have to invent. And all together with degrowth movement, with a lot of people who could be academics, who could be very radical activists, who could be just family trying to live in another way, etc. We have a wide and very difficult, very complex type of movement with people who step by step starts to construct a new model of society. And I think the transition is already going on. And it's a bit like a silent transition. We don't really see it. It's not like we have a big political party everywhere in the world promoting these ideas and who's able to take the power. No, it's something which is really like a silent transformation of the society, where step by step the people in their brain, with their hands, in their everyday life, start to change the way of life. And I think it's very important to understand that to take the power could be a good tool to change a society, but it's not enough. And if before there is not already a cultural transformation of society going on, it won't be useless and could even be dangerous.